Yes.
Now, the bottom line, Mr. White, the bottom line is based on your opinion and based upon the work that you were contracted to do in this case. Does the project meet the 8 criteria?
As I indicated in my direct testimony, I believe it does.
Why does it meet the 8 criteria?
Let me try to go through that. It takes a little bit of time, but I think it's worth it. The first one of the 8 criteria is the proposed land use is consistent with the purpose of the Conservation District. And I think that it is. The purpose of the Conservation District is to conserve, protect, and preserve the important natural resources through appropriate management. So this is not something where there's no use. Uses are allowed with appropriate management. The proposal complies with the board-approved comprehensive management plan for Mauna Kea and all of the subplans that have been also approved by the board for that. And that
Mr. Ching?
I have problems with this witness.
can't hear.
What is your objection?
He has been hired by...
Sir, maybe I can ask you to get the microphone because it sounds like you want to explain something.
Mr. White has been, or his firm has been hired by the university. The university is the applicant in this process. In a way, he's sort of like an agent of the university, and I find it not very good for an agent of the university, the applicant, to be saying to this hearing that he thinks the 8 criteria have been satisfied.
Mr. Ching, that's part of his direct testimony. It's subject to cross-examination, which you did, and it goes to the weight of the evidence. So I'm going to overrule the objection. Mr. Ashita, please continue.
Thank you, Your Honor.
The TMT management plan, which commits TMT to management activities and is consistent with all of those other previously approved plans. I also think that it's consistent with the advice and direction that was given in the 2000 master plan for Mauna Kea, which was not board approved, but which covers the proposed uses within the observatory precinct at the summit. The board has approved all of the existing observatories, and I think that this is entirely consistent with the purpose of the Conservation District. Moving on to the second one of those is whether or not it meets the objectives of the subzone. And as I talked in my testimony, it is in the resource subzone of the Conservation District. And there's a hierarchy of subzones, which I also mentioned. So at the very most restrictive of those is the protective subzone. The objectives of that are to protect valuable natural and cultural resources in designated areas. It's not in the protective subzone. The NAR right next to it is. So people were looking at this situation, deciding which subzone was appropriate, decided not to put the university lands the university is now leasing within that. It's the Mauna Kea Science Reserve. The next one down in the hierarchy is the limited subzone. And there it's to limit uses where natural conditions suggest constraints on human activities. It's not in the limited subzone. It's in the resource subzone. And if you look at what the purpose of the resource subzone is, you find that astronomy facilities are, with an approved management plan, are identified uses. And so I think that, in fact, it's entirely consistent with the objectives of the Conservation District as subzone that it's in. The third one of those is whether or not it complies with the provisions and the guidelines contained in Chapter 205. So that has to do with coastal zone management. And again, we found that it is. Many of the objectives that are on the coastal zone management program parallel those in the Conservation District, and I've already talked in some detail about that. And by those I'm referring to things such as scenic resources, historic things, open space, recreation. I believe that the proposed project does not have any is entirely consistent with what the objectives are for the conservation district there. The Mauna Kea Science Reserve is outside of the areas, the special management area and the shoreline setback areas, which were designated for most intensive management under the Coastal Zone Management Program. And there's no mechanism that I have seen through which the project would have significant effect on water quality, coastal ecosystems, and the other things that the Coastal Zone Management Program was intended to manage. Moving to the fourth of those items, the proposed land use will not cause substantial adverse impact to existing natural resources in the surrounding area, community, or region. And there, I believe that that is in fact the case for this project. There has been an EIS performed for it from which we drew. And I think it's important to remember that the proposal will alter 5 acres directly, and then the access roads another 3.8 acres, about half of which has already been disturbed within the 525 acre observatory precinct and the 11,000 acre Mauna Kea Science Reserve. So we're talking about something that occupies a small area. It's located where the 2000 master plan said future observatories of this type, if they were to be constructed on Mauna Kea, should go. So people were looking around, trying to follow the guidance that was out there. It provides funds for continuation enhancement of comprehensive management program activities, and those are important because they are designed to improve the situation, the environmental situation on Mauna Kea. I would say with the Mauna Kea Master Plan in 2000 has intensified ever since with the successive adoption of more and more controls over that. The proposal provides funds because it's nice to have ideas, but it's also good to have funds to carry out the management activities. So I think that having this project and the flow of funds that will come from it will allow better management of those areas. It provides for workforce training. It provides for decommissioning and removal. So we're talking about something that says, I'm not doing something on the mountain that is entirely permanent, forever, irreversible. Some things are, you will never return it to exactly as it is, but with a decommissioning plan, there is a commitment to go as far back towards the original natural condition as possible. So I think that it is entirely consistent with that.
Yes, Ms. Freitas.
There is living things in that area that is a threat, according to the EIS, that comes under the endangered species as well as the threat.
Okay, so what is your objection?
Objecting to number 4, what he said, the impacts is the...
Okay, so I'm going to overrule the objection, but when you have an opportunity to cross-examine this witness, you're certainly able to ask him a question about that. All right, thank you, Ms. Freitas.
Thank you, Judge. Okay, you're at number 4 now.
And I think that I covered most of the things that are within 4 in terms of there being minimal disturbance of the area, of all of the programs that are in place to enhance the management of the mountain, to offset things, and basically not looking only at the site, but at the totality of the managed lands on the mountain. And I think in some, it's a positive step. With respect to 5, whether or not it's compatible with the existing uses and the surrounding area, appropriate to the physical conditions and capabilities of the specific parcel or parcels. Again, I believe that the evidence shows that it is. It's in the astronomy precinct. There are many similar facilities that are already there, have been the subject of previous approved conservation district use permits. So this is not establishing a new use in a pristine area. It is adding a facility to an area where there are already many astronomical facilities. And I wanted to, in my testimony, I also pointed out that not only are there is the proposal to add facilities, there's a proposal to decommission facilities as well. So I've spoken in the past about the balance between these things, and I think that the university in its proposal is covering both sides of that. So they are proposing to add things and also to remove things. So that removal side of it is something that started with the 2000 master plan and I think has picked up steam since then. It certainly is, as I said previously, a permitted use in the resource subzone, and it's cited, so far as I can tell, in what everybody has agreed is the most appropriate location within that precinct. I haven't heard anybody saying that you really ought to put it on the summit area, and I think a real effort was made to cite this in a sensitive way, and that effort was made over a period of years. Whether or not it preserves the existing physical environmental aspects of the land, such as natural beauty and open space characteristics, and where possible improving. So, and I have previously testified that there's no doubt that this is going to be a new facility that everybody is going to see. So that's not at issue here. The point that I've tried to make is that it has been cited in the area where...
I would like to object to, I was not present on Thursday. I would assume that Mr. White has already testified to these matters. And I would object that he's calling for a narrative at this point on cross-examination.
Actually, he hasn't testified specifically. However, it's all in his direct examination. So I am going to ask that we perhaps move to a summary or something else.
All right.
Mr. Ashida, please.
Will do, Your Honor.
All right.
Thank you, Judge.
Sustain the objection.
Okay, so summarizing, the bottom line, do you have any doubt that any of this 8 criteria is not met?
We concluded that the criteria had been met. I believe that the staff recommendation from the Department of Land and Natural Resources found the same thing.
Now, I just have one more area I want to cover. There was some mention last week about...
Oh, excuse me. Ms. Freitas, did you want to say something?
All criteria has been met.
Okay, I know you want to ask him about that. So when your turn comes, certainly make a note and do that. Mr. Ashida, sorry. Go ahead.
Thank you, Your Honor. Now, Mr. White, I wrote this down in my notes. Section 106 of the Federal Environmental or Historic Preservation Laws. What is that?
Actually, that's a federal thing, and I misspoke when I mentioned 106. It actually went through the state historic preservation review process, and my reference should have been to Chapter 6E. So
Chapter 16.
6E.
Is it triggered by the TMT project?
No, the federal statute is not triggered by it, so that's why there was only the state review.
Right.
I would object no foundation to this witness's expertise in determining whether Section 106 of the National Historic Preservation Act is triggered by this.
You know, one of the things remember we had the discussion about foundation for exhibits, and also that all the testimony is in by direct. So the testimony in Mr. White's direct examination is submitted, and he does refer to these different acts. I guess I'll leave it to you, Mr. Ashida, how you want to respond to the objection as to foundation.
Well, Judge, I think last week as we discussed, I didn't think that was going to be an issue. What I gathered from the court's direction was that it would go to weight and not admissibility.
Well, that's my inclination, because there are many people who have submitted a lot of direct examination by testimony, a written testimony, and also a lot of exhibits that I'm wondering how the foundations are going to be laid, but my thinking is to relax that particular requirement as far as evidence is concerned and take it as to weight. Right. So for the moment, I'm going to overrule Ms. Aluli's objection. All right.
Thank you, Judge. Based on that, I have nothing further. Mr. White, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. And